Hello, welcome to Garden Chronicles. My name is James David. In today's video, I'll be talking about cane begonias, and these particular ones are actually cultivated and grown in a tropical region in my garden. If you have noticed that in most cases when it comes to cane begonias or even begonias, these are actually challenging plants as these can suddenly wither and perish away, and I find that these are the things that I will look out for and cultivating them in long-term basis in my garden condition. Hence here I'll be actually explaining a lot about tips and hacks on how to do it and to make sure that you actually have these plants going on for years in your garden space. Here is a collection of this particular type of begonia known as white ice, and I can actually say that they are quite sensitive and finicky. Somehow I may have managed to cultivate it in my garden, and one of the things that I have noticed here is that it does take a long time for them to be acclimatized in a garden space. And one of the things that I've noticed is that they do tend to become more on a cascading effect when they grow. And one of the things that I notice is that I don't actually allow them to grow very big, because I find that if they have grown too long, they can actually snap out of their own weight, and actually that can be detrimental for this particular cane begonia. And one of the things that I've also noticed is that I don't allow them to grow very big, and in most cases what I'll do is I just trim and propagate them. And for now, by appearing and looking at it, it appears to be healthy looking and able to grow very well, but I believe that this particular one may not be lasting for a long-term basis. And one of the things that I will always recommend is always have spares when it comes to cane begonias. Now, one of the most unique factors when it comes to white ice is that they do appear to be looking very much like a polka dot kind of begonia, more on the factor where it appears very much similar like those Maculata types, Maculata varieties, and then they have all these kind of spots on their leaf. And I find that it is quite intriguing, and it can be challenging and exciting if you were to have a collection of all the polka dot types of begonias, especially these cane begonias types. However, do take note that most of them are hybrids, so you may not actually able to identify them specifically on their original names, and in most cases some of them are actually more of the highland types where they don't do very well in a lowland climate. So these are the things that you may have to take note of, because a lot of these newer varieties have been introduced time to time, about 3 to 4 months time, in the local market, and in most cases they do come without their identification, so they can be very challenging to actually note their ID. And one of the factors here is that if they are actually hybrids, it can be very challenging because most of it will come without any labels. Similar like another type of polka dot kind of begonia, this particular one is known as elbow picta, and I find that this particular one has pink colored inflorescence. However, they do require bright sunlight or indirect light for them to bloom, and one of the other factors here is that their spots can be disappearing if they receive too much light, so they do require adequate lighting but not too bright, less as kind of a bright indirect hot sun kind of lighting. However, this particular one is very hardy, and I find that they can seems to grow very well in my garden condition. I have actually made few videos concerning these particular types of cane begonias. Do check out on my playlist concerning all these begonias, cane begonias, care and cultivation and their needs, and you can find a lot of information that I have actually placed that in my past videos. I must say, in comparison to so many of the cane begonias, this particular one seems to be very hardy and easy to cultivate and grow. And one of the things that I've actually noticed is that they are also very easy to be propagated, especially using the cane begonia cuttings. One of the things also I've noticed is that this particular begonia do not have any pest problem, and in a way I can say it is quite robust and easy to cultivate in this kind of lowland garden climate. One of the other characteristics that I find is that when it comes to cane begonia, and I always check at the back of the leaves to see any features that is available, and this particular one is very much appear to be very much flush green colors. And sometimes, in most cases, when it comes to Maculata breeds, they do tend to have some red kind of colorization at the back, but this particular one is very much green. The next in the list is this particular type of cane begonia. However, this is very much more on a shrub type and it's not really appears to be very much like a cane. However, I call it a cane begonia simply because it has this upright kind of growing condition, and I do not actually let it grow too big, and hence when I actually trim it and keep it in a small short kind of a span, and in that appearance it has this kind of cane begonia kind of characteristics. This particular one is known as U402. There is not much of the information that I can actually identify it. It has unknown origin that is suspected that it could be a Venezuelan species, and it was given by a Japanese visitor at the to a US botanist. But however, I can also say there's a lot of contention, and in most cases, a lot of it is not verified, and I'm not able to identify whether it's true or not. One of the things that I can say based on appearance and characteristics, it does have this particular dark vader kind of appearance, especially at the back of the leaves, and I can say that this could be, in my opinion, belong to a South Asia region kind of begonia because of their growing condition. I can be wrong, and one of the best ways to actually identify it is to use a DNA kind of study and research on it, but I don't think so a lot of that is being identified. The best thing that actually has been properly cataloged and identified are the orchid species. So begonias do tend to fall in the category where it has to fall into a factor of a collector's item, but there are also many begonia plant societies where they actually do thorough research, and even magazines and all kinds of study and research on it. But in my case, I'm actually collecting them for enthusiast kind of a factor, and just to see and cultivate the ones that I actually can grow. And my concern here is to cultivate those which are hardy in my lowland climate zone. So I particularly find that this particular burgundy kind of colorization that appears very vividly when it's exposed from at the back of their leaves. And I find that this particular one is quite hardy, and based on my experience that this is quite easy to grow in my garden condition. Now, again, one of the most important tips that I would really want to mention here is not to propagate them when they are appearing to be dying, or in a place where there is a sign of rot taking place, especially at the base of the plant. And this can be very detrimental for any types of begonias, and when that has occurred, it is just too late to save the plant. Next on the list, this particular begonia is known as begonia torch. There is also another identification known as begonia castaway. And of course, when it comes to cane begonias, most cases they are also identified as angel wheel begonia, or even red torch angel wing begonia. Now, there's another thing here which I find which is unique, which is not properly cataloged, are the white spots that is appearing on the leaves. And one of the things that I noticed is there's two types of colorization on that. One is without the spots, and another one is with the spots. They do have a very much on a reddish rosy kind of colorization when it comes to the inflorescence, and I find that this do very well in highland climate zone, and especially if you have more on a highland kind of a region where you have a good cold climate zone, this particular begonia do tend to thrive. However, these ones can survive, and a lot of care may be required to keep a good humidity and growing condition, otherwise they can just perish easily. Another tip that I would like to share here is that if you ever notice in this particular video that this cane seems to be sort of like slowly falling apart by their weight. In most cases, this is very much appear to be like a leggy kind of thing. In most cases, what I do is when I find these kind of things that's taking place, I will actually tie them up upright so that their growing condition will be much more easier as they continue to grow. Now, what if I don't do so? They can actually slowly come out from the root ball and it'll be appear to be very dangling, before you notice the plant is actually dying. So this is what I actually have done. I actually tied it up. I actually put a kind of a stick or anything that is upright and tie it up just loosely so that they can grow easily. Also, there's another factor here that I want to make mention here, is that it's also a good time to trim and propagate. And when it comes to propagation, do so immediately. I can say there are also chances where you can actually cut and place them in water and allow them to have roots to grow first and then plant them. But I also find that there is another contention where sometimes the water roots do not acclimatize easily when it comes to part where they grow back into the normal potting medium, and so forth they do tend to rot. So these are the things that you have to check and see, because in most cases it all depends on the particular type of species. The more sensitive they are, the higher the humidity that's required, and they may not do so well when it comes to repropagation, especially introducing them from water and then immediately into the potting medium. However, I find that one of the best things that I do is that when they do tend to appear leggy, I just trim and poke them whenever there is space, and I find that it's very successful. Next are the collections. Here are very much experimental. Here actually cultivating them in hanging pots, and I find they seems to do so very well in this kind of condition. Now, one of the things that I have actually done here is that I have trimmed them and poke a lot of the cuttings in one tight container, and I find that they seems to love the kind of a nook, crook and corner kind of growth factor, where when it comes to the canes, when I just poke them at the edge of the pot and then squeeze them together with the coconut chips, and I find that these do very well in this kind of growing condition. Now, not every single cuttings actually survived or did very well in this, but the ones that actually survived does seems to appear to be robust and healthy looking. One of the factors here I notice is the potting media seems to be the key factor of the successful growth for these particular types of begonias. And one of the things that I noticed that it has to be fast draining, and at the same time it should be able to hold enough moisture for the root ball to be able to grow steadily. And one of the things that I actually use is a good mixture of compost together with sand and coconut chips, and I find that this is good enough for most begonias. I have tried so many types and growing condition and all that. To a certain degree they were successful, but eventually after say about 6 months time, they do succumb back to rot and a dying condition. So I can say in most cases when it comes to begonias, they don't do last very long. And this is one of the telltale sign of some of the canes that didn't survive. I believe this should be burning bush. And one of the things that I want to mention here is that what has taken place is that I have trimmed them too late and actually placed them, and one of the reasons why this is actually fading and dying away is because it has finished its season and it's actually rotting. So this is one of the things that I want to mention, is that always have spare, because uh, this is what happens when they are not propagated. This is actually a very matured plant, and of course I just left it because some of the new shoots were appearing, but even that appears to be rotting away. So after this video I'll be most probably just pulling it out and checking and see whether anything can be salvaged. But in most cases I find that when the rot takes place, it doesn't really disturb the rest of the cane begonia. So in a way I can say it is safe. And of course, don't take the risk. I would not advise you to keep anything that is rotting. Here in this video purpose, I've just brought down these hanging pots and I've just double checked it, and I found that some did not survive and some actually died. So these are the things that you have to do, so maybe on a weekly basis, to double check and see that in case the cane begonia is dying, do remove it immediately. One of the things that you don't want those rotting pathogens or even all those kinds of bacteria infection or fungus to spread to other cane begonias and plants that is surviving in that potting hanging pot. I will place all their names at the screen above so that it will be more on discussion factor if you're looking for their ID. And one of the things in this particular experiment here is that I actually planted many different types of cane begonias together in one pot to create a kind of a combo kind of a look. And I find that it appears to be nice and visual. As a visual display, it looks cool for me. And one of the things that I find is that because I do so, and in a cramped up space, I'm able to maximize my garden space and plants in this kind of growing condition. Another tip that I would like to share here is that when it comes to hanging pots, I find that these canes, begonias and the cascading type seems to love it because they have enough room for them to grow, and most of them are actually grown at the side of the pot. Now you can see here that this particular albopicta is doing fine and some of the new growth appears to be growing. I can say this particular pot is not really healthy looking, and you can see that some of them, this particular U402 did not really survive, because you can see that at the end of the branch it actually rotten away. So these are the things that you have to check in a way to see that sometimes they don't really grow very well. Another tip that I would really like to share is feeding, and I find that it's very important to actually weekly apply foliar fertilizer on them, because I find that lacking which, these particular begonias do tend to grow sickly and may drop their leaves and can appear to be very leggy and may not survive in that growing condition. So these are the things that I noticed that it's very important when actually cultivating begonias in the garden space. Another most important factor that I find is watering and lighting. When it comes to lighting, I find that they do very well in semi-shade kind of appearance, where they do get a little bit limited lighting, especially maybe morning sun or evening sun. And this is very important so that their growth is actually stable, in a way to say that they don't grow leggy looking for growing lights. And another thing here that I notice here is that when I actually grow them in strong shaded area, I do find that pests seems to be attracted towards them. In most cases, I find white flies or even mealy bugs attacking them, and I find that sunlight seems to be a very strong deterrent for them to grow very well. Another factor is when it comes to watering, I normally water it in especially more on the conditions. Like if it's a rainy day, most probably I will never water it until I find that when it's a very dry kind of thing, then only I water it. Yeah, I find that this is very important, because too much water actually can cause root rot, and lack of watering can actually wither the plant. So these are things that you may have to check and see exactly how the garden condition is in your place. In my place, I find that I can actually forego overwatering, and I find that days, especially these begonias, can withstand few days of lack of water in comparison to overwatering. I've now come to the end of my video, and this is the part that I would really like to ask you for your favor. And if you really can, I would really appreciate very much that if you can actually subscribe to my channel. And this actually helps the YouTube algorithm to sort of like select and show the element of traffic that takes place in my channel, and this would actually create more awareness for all the other gardeners here who may want to see more of the detailed information on my garden space. And hence, when there's a lot of traffic, this will actually help to garner more interest in my channel.
One of the factors that I've actually noticed is through the analyst is that I only find only 2% of the people here who actually does click like and subscribe to my channel. Hence, I would really like to make emphasis here for a request. And if you really like my video and if you find that my videos and my channel is beneficial and helpful for your gardening experience, and you look forward for looking into my garden space, I would really appreciate seriously if you can click like and subscribe to my channel, and do place in your comments, and I will more than happy to entertain and indulge myself in putting in all the queries in according to your questions based on my experience and my knowledge. Also, I would really like to request that you do check out in all your other videos here, which is under popular and most viewed, and see if at all any plants that actually garner your gardening experience. Thank you so much for your support, and see you again in my next video. Take care and have a nice day. Bye.